Hey guys, I'm Becca Boot.
And I'm Melissa Coombs.
And welcome to our integrated group health lesson plan video. We are designed a 3rd grade lesson plan this time. It's going to take about 60 minutes. The lesson title is Why Laws and Why Not. It's a pretty cool lesson that allows students to really understand how social studies and health really goes together. And our main focus, like the topic focus, is alcohol and other drugs. So for our GPS standards, we decided to use HE 3.1 and 3.2. This has to do with health promotion and how influences can influence us, basically. The National Health Education Standards are basically the same thing as the GPS, it's just a little bit more broad. And then our academic standard for social studies is SS3CG2, and it's all about laws and why they're important and why we need them, and just kind of how we are supposed to obey them. So we have 3 measurable objectives. The first one is for affective, and it's all about students being able to explain the reasoning behind why specific laws are created and why they're important. The cognitive measurable objective is that students will be able to sort laws, whether they're real or fake, true or false, that kind of thing. And then psychomotor, the students have to be able to draw themselves with different consequences. So whether they obey a law or whether they break a law and what consequences can ensue from that.
We have why are laws created, why do we have laws prohibiting drug usage and underage drinking, and also how can we determine whether an influence is positive or negative. For our central skill focus, we're going to have the students be able to develop ways to avoid unhealthy and tempting situations. They're also going to learn the importance of laws, why we have them in place, and also be able to determine positive and negative consequences based off of breaking laws or following laws. So the materials needed for this lesson, we're going to need computers, a list of laws, and worksheets for following versus breaking laws.
So for the icebreaker and motivational kind of opening, we are going to do laws true or false. And this is where the kids will get a list of laws that are kind of silly, some of them are true, some of them are false, and they have to be able to then deduce that and find out if it's real or fake. So for our health skill development, we decided that we would enhance this in the students by allowing them just to learn more about alcohol and other drugs and how those influence us. And then with the influence, what is a positive and what is a negative influence, and how can we tell the difference between those? The students are also going to be able to understand consequences and how certain actions, if they do them incorrectly, can then have those negative consequences as well.
For our first part of the lesson focus, it's going to be called Draw a Law. So the students have to basically pick a law. They're going to draw themselves twice. The first time is going to be the positive consequences of them following the law. The second time they draw themselves is going to be them breaking the law and the negative consequences that come from it.
So students are also going to have access to a computer in order to find a law that interests them, but the only requirement is that they have to include that law in their picture so that we know what they're kind of going off of. And so then we can make sure that the consequences are something that could actually happen. website is just really good to help students really just understand what drinking is. It goes over alcoholism and really just how to say no, who you can talk to, things like that. So it's just a really good website that allows students to really understand what alcohol is. And then they can also kind of infer with alcohol how drugs can also kind of fall into that category. The students will read the entire website and all of the information that's contained on it. It's only 2 pages, so it's not too much. The students will then have to write down 5 things that they found the most interesting, and will share those with the class when the reading is completed. The students will then talk about who has influences over them, and just kind of how that has to do with alcohol and how we can then learn to say no. And then the student will be able to scaffold just learning and asking questions about how alcohol affects the body, and why they believe that the drinking age is 21. And then the students will be able to kind of have a discussion and decide if that should be the drinking age. Should it be 21 or should it be higher? Should it be lower? So the students are really just able to infer a lot and use deductive reasoning to figure out just really what alcohol is all about.
So for the third part of the lesson focus, so the students are going to make their own law. They're going to come up with a problem that they think needs to be fixed, and they're going to come up with a law to fix said problem. At the end of this section, all the students are going to read their law to the class. They're going to have their reasoning behind why they made this law, why they put it into place, what problems it solves, and the students are going to vote thumbs up or thumbs down on whether they think this should become a law or not. Obviously, we're not the government. We can't make it an actual law, but they'll understand the process of how laws become a thing.
And with that, the students would also have the opportunity to really just choose what problem they want to be fixed. It could be something that's inside of school or outside of school. Like, if they think they have too much homework, the students could be like, the problem I want to fix is that there's too much homework. So the law should be that we only have homework 2 days a week or 3 days a week, or we don't have homework on weekends. So that they really have an opportunity to kind of feel like they understand why a law is made and how it fixes that problem.
So for the closing activity, the students are going to do a think, pair, share. And so basically we're just going to do this with the essential questions, as mentioned earlier in the video. The students are going to come up with the answers in their minds. They're going to turn to a partner and they're going to share their answers. And at the end, after everybody's done with their group discussions, we're going to come together as a class, and the teacher's going to go over it as a class, and we'll have a whole class discussion.
And that will also let us really see if the students really understood and grasped the concepts in the lesson. And that's kind of going to be where we could go back and reteach if something wasn't very clear to the students. So there's going to be a few assessments for all of the things that we're doing in this lesson. For the icebreaker, there will not be an assessment. It's kind of just an icebreaker. It's just to have the kids kind of do something kind of silly to get them warmed up in the classroom and get them comfortable with talking. For the second activity, the draw a law activity, the students will be graded based on a rubric. And it's basically that they have to depict themselves in 2 situations about the same law, one following and one not following. It's going to be pretty simple, but they do have to have a reasonable consequence based on the law that they chose. So it has to be something that matches. It can't be out of the ordinary. So obviously they get full credit if they do it all right and they have good consequences and they draw themselves in the same law and all that. And then they would not get credit if they didn't pick one law, if they tried to do a couple laws, or if they didn't have a way to defend what the consequence was, and if it wasn't something that could actually happen. For the website and creating a way out activity, there is not going to be a rubric or anything. It's just going to be that the students have to come up with something creative that will get them out of a situation if they're ever put in a dangerous situation, or a tempting situation, or just a situation that isn't very healthy for them to be in. The main assessment for that will come through when the students share with the class, and it's just going to be like a yes, no, do they understand it, do they not understand it. The law creation activity will be graded very similarly to the website activity, and it's just going to be a checklist based on whether or not the students are able to come up with a solution to a problem and create a law that could effectively solve that problem.
So for the student products, the only product that we're really going to have from them is the drawings of the consequences of the positive or the negative, whether they follow the law or they break the law.
So for some modifications that we could do in this lesson plan, obviously all of us as we're becoming teacher are going to have students that are ELL students. And a lot of them are typically ELL students because they come from a place other than here. So we can encourage them to kind of share laws that they have, where they came from, and why those were a thing, and what kind of problems they fixed, and if they think they were fair or not. ELL students, for the website activity, it can also be switched to Spanish at least, so at least students who are coming from a Spanish background are then able to also complete that activity. I think it only switches to Spanish, so that would be kind of a limited modification, but it is there.
For sight impaired students, if they can't physically read the website themselves, then a lot of computer programs have the ability to read the website out loud.